Here's what you should know about your local housing market in this week's Market Update. The market continues to remain strong. However, we're about to hit August tomorrow, which is typically a time where we see some changes in consumer behavior that typically gets the market to slow down. However, I'm going to throw in an extreme word of caution here. There has been so much talk these last few years about seasonality. It's always been a factor in play, but I feel like much more so my clients are asking me about seasonality and trying to time their home sales and purchase around seasonality. And I feel like this year more than ever, buyers and sellers, more so sellers, tried to time their home sales, their moves around the seasonality and the quote unquote best time of year to sell a house. And it ended up shooting themselves in the foot over it, because there's so much more than seasonality that comes into play. There's much more macroeconomic factors. There's also the simple fact of, there really is no bad time to buy or sell a home. Now, there are certain unpredictable economic events that could happen that could really hurt your, make it less desirable to buy or sell a home. But in terms of seasonality, I had a lot of people wait until that perfect week in spring when everything's in bloom that statistically is supposed to net the most in terms of home sale. And that ended up backfiring. We had the war in Iran start and we had interest rates shoot up. They ended up actually doing worse than if they had put their house on the market in the middle of the snowstorm this past winter. Same thing goes for August. August, typically we see much lower inventory. We see much lower buyer activity here in New Jersey. Everybody's in vacation mode. They're getting their last taste of summer. They're getting ready for school. However, that also means that the competition is typically less. So you do have, especially right now with a low inventory environment, you do still have a lot of buyers in the market. I know I have plenty of buyers who have been searching for months and months and months to find the right home that are just hoping that when August hits, homes continue to come on the market in force because they're still looking for that perfect home and they'd like to get into it before this fall. So don't be too cautious about seasonality. Certain types of homes do need to be a little more cautious about it, but there's so much bigger factors at play, and there's positives and negatives which each time of year, and that's where we come in to help you evaluate whether those are going to factor into your home sale. So that being said, let's get into the stats this week. We're looking at stats for Morristown, Chatham, Madison, Harding, Mars Plains, Mendham, Chester, Bernardsville, Basking Ridge, and Randolph. So this past week, we saw 46 new homes come on the market. That's the exact same amount we saw last week, so that seems to be remaining fairly steady. Out of these, 34 were single-family houses, and 12 of them were condos or townhouses. The average list price of these homes was $1,534,000, which is 22% higher than last week. Total inventory. We currently have 279 homes actively on the market in these towns, exactly the same number that we saw last week as well. Total homes sold this past week. Okay, so now this is going to be interesting because I'm starting to see homes from that quote unquote best time of the year, best week of the year to sell start to close. This past week we saw 36 homes sell in these towns. That's 227% more than we saw close last week. The average list price of these homes, $1,428,000. The average sale price, $1,460,000. So the interesting thing here is as we break it down from town to town, we're seeing much different numbers than we got used to seeing in prior weeks. So let's see. Break it down town to town. We actually saw 2 towns where homes sold below the list price. Morristown, homes sold 0.4% below the list price, and Chatham, homes sold 0.8% below the list price. Now, the other towns all sold above the list price, although we didn't see, while we saw very strong numbers here, we didn't see any of the astronomical numbers that we've gotten used to seeing in some of the prior weeks. So this past week in Madison, homes went 4.7% above list price. Mendham, 2.8% above list price. Chester, just 0.5% above list price. Bernardsville, 8.5% above list price. Basking Ridge, 4.8% above list price. And Randolph, 6% above list price. So still seeing some strong numbers above list price, but not every town went above list price, went above or well above list price. What I'm thinking, what I'm interpreting from the front lines is, that beginning to middle of April time frame that everybody was shooting for getting their houses on the market. We did see a little blip during that time. So we're going to see stats in this week, next week, and the following week. Most likely, a lot of those homes closing. And what my theory is on this is it seems to be that activity is kicked back up and those home sales have re-strengthened. I think right around that time, that's typically the best seasonality, was also right when we saw that unexpected start to the war in Iran, which in addition to that start in the war in Iran, while no one likes to see any major global conflict, they also, with that, we saw a big increase in mortgage interest rates. And since then, we've seen mortgage interest rates continue to climb. However, it's possible that we've seen some leveling out. It does seem to me that the competition has remained strong and gained strength since that April timeframe. I think that's just a matter of low inventory. We saw a bunch of people wait to get their homes on the market at the same time, so we also had an influx of inventory during the few short weeks, and that inventory has thinned out again. So we're going to see how that shapes up as we get more into summer and fall. We're going to see some of the later spring, early summer stats shape out in the home sales. I think we're going to see them tick back up to much more above list price, but we shall see what story the stats tell. And then finally, under contract. Under contract are our least complete data, but our most current data. This past week, we saw 29 homes go under contract. That's substantially less homes than we saw last week go under contract. The average list price of the homes that went under contract, $1,280,000. That's 23% higher than the prior week. And then the average days on market. We saw the average days on market for homes that went under contract was 67 days on the market. That's 82% higher than last week. However, it looks like we might have an outlier. Chatham, we saw 3 homes going under contract with an average days on market of 359 days on the market. So let's see what it looks like last week. While our days on market is way up from the prior week, I think that we're likely looking at one outlier that completely skewed the numbers. So that being said, thanks so much for checking in with me. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you enjoy these last few weeks of summer. As we get into August, we will continue to track the market. If you are looking to get a home purchased or sold this fall market is typically as strong as spring market, but much shorter. We have to be prepared for it. So if you're thinking of making a move this fall, we should start talking now and getting that home sale ready to go and start planning. So once again, thanks so much for checking in with me. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you again next week.